Of Ethan Cole. Before we begin, I need you to do 3 things. Like this video so this story reaches more people. Subscribe if you believe the truth should never disappear. And turn on notifications, because once you hear what Ethan Cole witnessed, you won't forget it. This is not just a missing person case. This is a story someone tried very hard to erase. At 2:43 a.m. on October 18th, a voicemail arrived at the WCRT newsroom. The night editor, Michelle Torres, was alone in the office, finishing edits on the morning broadcast when the message notification lit up her screen. She almost deleted it. Late-night voicemails were usually drunk callers or conspiracy theorists rambling about chemtrails. But something made her click play. What she heard made her blood run cold. Heavy breathing, labored, desperate, a metallic echo, like someone was trapped inside a shipping container or industrial space. Background noise barely audible but distinctly mechanical. Machinery, all ventilation systems running, then a voice, shaking, barely above a whisper, but unmistakably terrified. "I saw what they did. If anyone hears this, I don't think I'm getting out." 17 seconds. That's all it was. 17 seconds that would launch one of the most baffling disappearances in modern journalism. The voice belonged to Ethan Cole, a respected investigative journalist, a colleague, a friend, and as of that moment, a missing person. Michelle tried calling back immediately. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Nothing. She contacted the police at 3:07 a.m. By sunrise, a search was underway. But Ethan Cole was already gone. And what investigators would uncover in the following weeks would reveal a story far darker than anyone imagined. A story of corruption, violence, and a murder that someone powerful wanted buried. Along with the only witness, the man WHO asked too many questions. WHO was Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole was not the reckless type. He wasn't the journalist who chased danger for headlines or threw caution aside for a scoop. He was deliberate, methodical, almost obsessively careful. At 36 years old, Ethan had built a reputation that made powerful people nervous. For 12 years, he'd worked as an investigative journalist, first at small regional papers, then at larger outlets, before landing at WCRT as their lead investigative reporter. His specialty was corporate fraud and environmental crimes. The unglamorous stuff that didn't generate clicks but changed laws. He'd exposed illegal dumping operations that poisoned water supplies. He'd traced offshore accounts that helped politicians hide bribes. He'd connected shell companies to human trafficking rings. 3 of his investigations had led to federal indictments. Ethan had this quality where he just wouldn't let go, says Marcus Reed, his former editor at the Metro Tribune. Once he caught a scent, he'd follow it for months. Years, even. He was patient in a way most journalists aren't anymore. But Ethan wasn't motivated by awards or recognition. He rarely did TV interviews. He avoided social media. His byline appeared on explosive stories, but his face remained largely unknown to the public. Friends described him as quiet, private, almost introverted. He wasn't trying to be famous, says his close friend and former college roommate, David Nguyen. He genuinely believed in holding people accountable. It sounds corny, but he really thought journalism could make things better. Ethan lived alone in a modest apartment downtown. No wife, no kids. His last serious relationship had ended 2 years earlier. His life revolved around work. Too much, some said. His apartment walls were covered in timelines, photographs, documents connected by red string like something out of a crime thriller. "I used to joke that his place looked like a serial killer's lair," David laughs, but the humor fades quickly. But that's just how his brain worked. Everything was connected. He saw patterns nobody else did. That gift for seeing connections would lead Ethan to the biggest story of his career. And possibly, to his death. Northpoint investigation. It started with a tip. Early September, an anonymous email sent to Ethan's work account. The subject line read, "You should look into Northpoint Logistics." The body of the email contained just a link to corporate filings and a single sentence, "Follow the money." It doesn't go where they say it does. Ethan almost ignored it. Anonymous tips were common, and most led nowhere. But something about the message felt different. The filings were real, publicly accessible, not some dark web conspiracy nonsense. So he looked. Northpoint Logistics was a medium-sized freight and storage company based just outside the city. On paper, they handled standard commercial shipping, warehouse operations, nothing remarkable. But when Ethan started digging deeper, inconsistencies appeared. The company reported consistent revenue, but their shipping manifests didn't match their declared cargo volumes. Their tax filings showed payments to subcontractors that didn't seem to exist. And their primary warehouse, a place called the Blackridge Manufacturing Plant, had been officially closed for 3 years following a fire. Yet utility records showed ongoing electricity usage. Security logs showed vehicles entering and leaving, and satellite imagery revealed fresh tire tracks in the lot. Someone was using that factory. But for what? The environmental angle. Ethan's initial theory was illegal waste dumping. It fit the pattern. Abandoned industrial sites were perfect for companies looking to dispose of hazardous materials without paying proper fees or following environmental regulations. He started interviewing former employees of Northpoint. Most wouldn't talk. The ones who did spoke carefully, always off the record. One former logistics coordinator, who Ethan promised to keep anonymous, told him, "We moved stuff that wasn't on any manifest." Middle of the night runs. Cash payments. I asked once what we were hauling, and my supervisor told me if I wanted to keep my job, I'd stop asking questions. Another source, a truck driver who'd quit 6 months earlier, was more direct. Whatever they're doing at Blackridge, it's not storage. I picked up a load there once at 2 a.m. The place was lit up inside like a warehouse, but all the windows were blacked out. I heard machinery running, heavy machinery, and it smelled wrong. Chemical, burnt. Ethan compiled his findings into a preliminary report and presented it to his editor, Sarah Hoffman. He had enough for a story, Sarah recalls, sitting in her office at WCRT. Corporate malfeasance, possible environmental violations, financial fraud. It was solid, but Ethan wanted more. He wanted to see inside that factory. Sarah told him to be careful. She told him not to go alone. She told him to coordinate with the police if he found something concrete. Ethan promised he would, but promises are easy to make, and harder to keep when the truth is just beyond a locked door. Weeks before, in the 3 weeks leading up to his disappearance, Ethan became increasingly consumed by the Northpoint story. Co-workers noticed the change. He stopped coming to lunch, says fellow reporter Amanda Cross. He'd stay late, sometimes until midnight, just reviewing documents. He looked exhausted. I asked if he was okay, and he just said, "I'm close." Really close. Ethan's personal notebook from that period, recovered later by police, reveals his growing obsession. Page after page of names, dates, financial transactions. Notes about shell companies in the Cayman Islands. References to a security contractor called Sentinel Group, with ties to former military and intelligence personnel. And repeatedly, circled multiple times, the words, "What are they hiding?" On October 12, 5 days before he disappeared, Ethan met with a source he'd been cultivating for weeks. A former accountant for Northpoint who'd agreed to share internal documents. They met at a coffee shop downtown. The accountant handed over a flash drive containing spreadsheets, invoices, and email correspondence. "Be careful with this," the accountant reportedly said. "These people don't mess around." Ethan took the drive home and spent the next 72 hours analyzing the data. What he found shocked him. According to the financial records, Northpoint wasn't just dumping waste. They were facilitating something much larger. The invoices referenced consultancy fees paid to individuals with no apparent connection to logistics or freight. Wire transfers to offshore accounts in amounts that dwarfed any legitimate business expense. And most disturbing, payments labeled simply as facility maintenance that totaled over $2 million in the past year alone. For a factory that was supposedly closed. Ethan sent an email to his editor on October 16. "Sarah, this is bigger than environmental fraud. I think Northpoint is a front. I need to confirm something, then we go to press." Sarah wrote back, "What do you need to confirm? Don't do anything risky." Ethan never responded, because by then, he'd already made his decision. He was going to the Blackridge plant. And he was going that night. October 17th, the final day. Ethan Cole woke up at 6:30 a.m. on October 17th. His phone records show he made coffee, checked his email, and spent the morning reviewing notes. At 9:47 a.m., he sent a text to David Nguyen, "Drinks this weekend. I might have some big news." David replied, "You always have big news. But yeah, I'm in." At 11:15 a.m., Ethan went to the gym. His usual routine, 30 minutes on the treadmill, light weights. The gym's security footage shows him leaving at 12:03 p.m., looking normal. Relaxed, even. He stopped at a sandwich shop for lunch. returned to his apartment, and for the next several hours, his movements become harder to track. What we know comes from digital breadcrumbs. At 2:34 p.m., he searched Google Maps for directions to the Blackridge Manufacturing Plant. At 3:17 p.m., he purchased a high-powered flashlight and batteries from a hardware store. At 4:45 p.m., he filled his car with gas. At 6:22 p.m., he sent his final text to his editor, Sarah, "If this pans out, it's bigger than we thought." Sarah didn't see the message until hours later. By then, it was too late. The approach. Security cameras from a gas station 2 miles from the industrial zone captured Ethan's car at 11:34 p.m., a dark sedan. License plate visible, heading east toward the abandoned factories that lined the river. At 11:58 p.m., his car appeared on a traffic camera at the entrance to the industrial park where Blackridge was located. The roads out there were potholed and poorly lit. Most of the factories had shut down years ago, victims of outsourcing and economic decline. Only a few warehouses remained operational, scattered among the ruins. Blackridge Manufacturing sat at the far end of the complex. A massive concrete structure, 3 stories tall, stretching the length of a football field. Chain-link fencing surrounded the property, but sections had been cut or had fallen into disrepair. Official signs declared it condemned. But as Ethan's sources had told him, the place was far from abandoned. Ethan parked his car in a lot adjacent to the factory, partially hidden behind an old dumpster. According to his phone's GPS data, he stayed in the car for 11 minutes. Watching, waiting. At 12:09 a.m., his location began moving toward the factory. Inside the factory, what happened inside Blackridge Manufacturing is known only through fragments. Broken pieces of evidence that investigators tried to assemble like a shattered mirror. At 12:41 a.m., Ethan activated the voice recording app on his phone. The audio file, 37 minutes and 22 seconds long, was later recovered by police. It has never been released to the public, but portions have been described in court documents and by investigators who listened to it. The recording begins with Ethan's breathing, heavy but controlled, the sound of footsteps on concrete. His voice, barely a whisper, "I'm inside." Main entrance was unlocked, heading toward the west wing. More footsteps, the creak of a door opening, then silence for nearly 3 minutes. When sound returns, it's distant. Male voices, at least 2, possibly 3, arguing. The words are indistinct, muffled by distance and the acoustics of the massive space. But the tone is clear. Anger, aggression. At 12:58 a.m., the voices grow louder. Ethan must have moved closer, perhaps trying to hear what was being said. Then, suddenly, a scream. Sharp, terrified, cut short, the sound of something heavy hitting concrete. A metallic clang, like a tool or weapon being dropped. More shouting, footsteps running, and then Ethan's voice, panicked, barely audible, "Oh my God. Oh my God." The recording becomes chaotic. Ethan is moving fast, running, his breathing ragged. The phone jostles, creating bursts of static and distortion. At 1:03 a.m., a new sound, someone else's voice. Male, commanding, "Stop. Who's there?" Ethan doesn't respond. More running. A door slams. The recording continues for another minute, filled with heavy breathing and the sound of footsteps echoing in what sounds like a stairwell. Then, abruptly, it stops. The file ends at 1:18 a.m. Ethan's phone never recorded again. # The witness. What Ethan witnessed in that factory has never been definitively established. But based on the audio and subsequent evidence, investigators believe he saw a murder. Not an accident, not self-defense, a deliberate, premeditated killing. The question that has haunted this case from the beginning. Who was killed, and why has no one ever reported them missing? In the weeks following Ethan's disappearance, police searched missing persons databases. They cross-referenced with unsolved homicides. They interviewed associates of Northpoint Logistics. But they never identified a victim. No body was found at the factory. No blood evidence that couldn't be explained by the building's industrial past. It was as if the murder Ethan witnessed never happened, or had been cleaned up so thoroughly that no trace remained. Former FBI profiler Dr. Catherine Mills, who consulted on the case, believes the answer is simpler and more disturbing. The most likely scenario is that Ethan witnessed the murder of someone who was already off the grid. An undocumented worker, someone involved in illegal activity. A person whose disappearance wouldn't be reported because they didn't officially exist. That theory is chilling. because it suggests a level of planning and ruthlessness that goes far beyond ordinary crime. It suggests an organization capable of making people disappear, without a trace, without consequences. And when Ethan Cole accidentally witnessed their work, they added one more name to that list. The panic. After the recording stopped, Ethan's movements become harder to track. His phone's GPS shows him moving erratically through the factory for the next hour. Hiding, doubling back, trying to find a way out. At 2:19 a.m., he attempted to call 911. The call didn't connect, either no signal, or the phone was damaged. At 2:31 a.m., he sent a text to Sarah, Blackridge. Saw murder. They know I'm here. The message never delivered. It remained in his phone's outbox, unsent, waiting for a signal that never came. At 2:43 a.m., Ethan tried one more call. The newsroom. This time, it connected. But no one answered, so he left a voicemail. The voicemail: I saw what they did. If anyone hears this, I don't think I'm getting out. 17 seconds. That would become the most analyzed piece of audio in the investigation. Sound engineers have dissected every millisecond. The breathing suggests extreme stress. The metallic echo indicates a confined space, possibly a room with metal walls or machinery. Background noise is consistent with industrial ventilation systems. And in the final 2 seconds, just before the recording cuts off, there's another sound. Barely audible, easy to miss, but once you hear it, impossible to unhear. A door opening, and a voice. Not Ethan's. Someone else. 3 words, calm and cold. There you are. Then nothing. The voicemail ends, and Ethan Cole vanishes from history. At this point in the investigation, everything changes. If you were Ethan Cole, would you have entered that factory? Comment below. Do you think Ethan was silenced, or do you believe he escaped? Read the comments carefully. Sometimes, the most disturbing theories come from viewers who see what investigators missed. Search begins. Police arrived at the Blackridge Manufacturing Plant at 6:47 a.m. on October 18th. Ethan had been missing for less than 4 hours, but Michelle Torres from the newsroom had been insistent. The voicemail, the panic in his voice, the mention of murder. This wasn't a journalist out chasing a story. This was an emergency. Detective Lisa Reeves led the initial search team. 23 years on the force, she'd seen everything. But walking into that factory, she felt something was wrong immediately. The place was massive, she recalls. 3 stories, multiple wings, probably 200,000 square feet. And it was dark. Some emergency lights still worked, but most of the building was pitch black. They found Ethan's car within minutes. Parked behind a dumpster, doors locked, keys gone. Inside they found his laptop bag, but the laptop itself was missing. At 7:32 a.m., a K9 unit arrived. The dogs picked up Ethan's scent immediately and led officers into the factory through an unlocked side entrance. The trail led through a series of corridors and into the west wing. Exactly where Ethan's recording indicated he'd gone. The dogs stopped at a large open space that appeared to have been a manufacturing floor. Old machinery sat rusted and silent. Concrete pillars supported the ceiling. And in the center of the room, investigators found something that made them call for backup. Disturbing discovery. On the floor, near one of the support pillars, were Ethan's car keys. Just sitting there, as if they'd been dropped. Or placed deliberately. 20 feet away, his notebook. The same one he'd been using to document the Northpoint investigation. It was soaked in some kind of oil or industrial fluid, the pages nearly illegible. But it was clearly Ethan's. His handwriting, his notes, his obsession laid out in ink. The third discovery was the most disturbing. Along the base of one of the pillars was a blood smear. Not a pool, not a spatter pattern, a smear, as if someone had wiped blood off their hands or a weapon onto the concrete. The forensic team collected samples immediately. DNA analysis would take days, but preliminary field tests confirmed it was human blood. Type O positive, Ethan's blood type, but when the full DNA results came back, they revealed something unexpected. The blood wasn't Ethan's. It didn't match anyone in the criminal database. It belonged to an unknown individual. Perhaps the murder victim Ethan had witnessed. But without a body, there was no way to confirm. Missing evidence. What wasn't found was just as significant as what was. Ethan's phone was never recovered. Neither was his laptop, which he'd left in his car but had presumably taken inside at some point. The voice recording device he'd used was gone. Any photographs he might have taken vanished. And perhaps most telling, there were no signs of a significant struggle. No overturned furniture, no broken glass, no indication of violence severe enough to incapacitate a grown man. It was as if Ethan had simply been erased. The scene was too clean, Detective Reeves admits. When someone disappears violently, there's chaos. Blood, evidence of resistance. This felt staged, like someone had time to tidy up. That observation led to a troubling conclusion. Whatever happened to Ethan Cole, it likely didn't happen immediately after his voicemail. Someone had time. Time to clean. Time to remove evidence. Time to make sure nothing useful remained. Surveillance gap. One of the biggest frustrations in the investigation was the lack of surveillance footage from the factory itself. The building had no active security cameras, but the surrounding industrial park did. Investigators pulled footage from every camera within a mile radius, and what they found was bizarre. Multiple vehicles entered and left the area between midnight and 4 a.m. on the night of Ethan's disappearance, including several large vans, but license plates were either obscured or registered to companies that didn't exist. One camera, positioned at the entrance to the industrial park, showed a black SUV leaving at 3:47 a.m. moving fast. The image quality was poor, but enhancement revealed something in the back seat. A shape, possibly a person, slumped over, or a pile of equipment. Impossible to tell. The SUV's license plate was covered with mud. Conveniently, that vehicle was never identified. Corporate wall. When police attempted to investigate Northpoint Logistics, they hit immediate resistance. The company's attorneys stonewalled every request. They refused to provide employee records without a warrant. They claimed the Blackridge facility was inactive and hadn't been used in years. They suggested Ethan had been trespassing and whatever happened to him was unrelated to their business. When Detective Reeves finally obtained a warrant to search Northpoint's offices, she found almost nothing. Their file cabinets were mostly empty, she says. Computer hard drives had been wiped. They claimed it was routine data purging, but the timing was suspicious. The only useful information came from a mid-level manager who, off the record, admitted that Blackridge was occasionally used for special projects. What kind of projects? The manager wouldn't say, but when pressed, he offered a single ominous sentence: "Some clients need discretion. We provide that." Sentinel connection. One name kept appearing in Ethan's notes: Sentinel Group. A private security contractor with vague online presence and no public-facing operations. Corporate filings listed him as a risk management consultancy, but former military sources described them differently. Sentinel is where people go when they leave Black Ops, explains Marcus Hale, a former Army intelligence officer. They do work governments can't officially do: protection, extraction, and sometimes, cleanup. Ethan had apparently discovered that Sentinel Group was on Northpoint's payroll. For what purpose, he hadn't confirmed before he disappeared, but his notes suggested he believed they were more than just security. One page in his notebook, partially damaged but still readable, contained a bullet point list: Sentinel, former CIA. Multiple offshore payments, connected to Blackridge. Who are they protecting? When investigators tried to contact Sentinel Group, they were met with silence. No office address, no phone number that connected, no representatives willing to speak. The company existed on paper, but in practice, it was a ghost. Just like the people it allegedly employed. Seized evidence. Within 72 hours of Ethan's disappearance, federal agents appeared at WCRT. They didn't announce their arrival. They simply walked in with a warrant and began seizing materials. Ethan's desk was cleared. His work computer was taken. File folders disappeared. Sarah Hoffman, his editor, tried to intervene. I asked what authority they had, she recalls, anger still fresh in her voice. They showed me paperwork claiming Ethan's investigation intersected with an ongoing federal inquiry. They said his materials were evidence. Evidence of what? They wouldn't say. Sarah demanded a receipt for everything taken. She got one, but when the newsroom's attorneys tried to follow up and request the return of materials, they hit a bureaucratic wall. The case number on the warrant didn't match any active federal investigation. The agents' names couldn't be verified through normal channels, and the materials were never returned. It was like they didn't exist, Sarah says. The whole thing, the warrant, the agents, the investigation they claimed to be part of, it all vanished. Even more disturbing, the hard drives containing Ethan's research were reportedly wiped before seizure. IT forensics confirmed that someone accessed the newsroom's server remotely on the night of October 17th. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. while Ethan was in the factory. Someone with sophisticated technical skills deleted every file related to the Northpoint investigation. Permanently, beyond recovery, Sarah contacted the FBI, the state police, the district attorney's office. Everyone promised to investigate. No one followed through. The demolition. 3 weeks after Ethan Cole vanished, demolition crews arrived at the Blackridge Manufacturing Plant. No public notice, no environmental assessment, no historical review, just bulldozers and wrecking balls. Within 5 days, the entire structure was reduced to rubble. The debris was hauled away to an undisclosed landfill, and the lot was paved over. Detective Reeves tried to stop it. She filed an emergency injunction, arguing the site was an active crime scene. The judge denied it. The official reason: insufficient evidence that a crime had occurred at that location. I couldn't believe it, Reeves says, shaking her head. We had blood evidence, a missing person, a witness account of murder, and they demolished it anyway. When asked who ordered the demolition, records point to a real estate investment trust with layers of corporate ownership. Trace those layers far enough, and you find shell companies registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. The same jurisdictions Ethan had been investigating. The same places Northpoint Logistics sent its money. Coincidence? Or cover-up? Ethan was silenced. The most obvious explanation is the darkest. Ethan Cole witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see. Someone realized he was there, and they eliminated the problem. Former FBI agent Robert Chen, who consults on missing persons cases, believes this is exactly what happened. Everything about this case points to organized crime or corporate malfeasance with serious resources, Chen explains. The cleanup was professional. The evidence removal was systematic. This wasn't some random violence. This was a hit. According to this theory, Ethan's body was removed from the factory that night, likely in one of the vehicles captured leaving the industrial park. His remains were disposed of in a way that ensures they'll never be found. And the people responsible used their connections to shut down the investigation before it could gain traction. The demolition of Blackridge wasn't about development. It was about destroying evidence. If you wanted to hide what happened in that building, Chen says, grinding it to dust and burying it in a landfill is pretty effective. This theory is supported by the professional nature of the cleanup, the disappearance of digital evidence, the interference in the investigation, the rapid demolition of the crime scene. But it leaves one question unanswered. If they killed Ethan, where is his body? Ethan escaped and is hiding. Some investigators and friends refuse to believe Ethan is dead. They point to the lack of a body as evidence that he might have escaped. Ethan was smart, David Nguyen insists. If he realized he was in danger, he would have run. And if he knew people were after him, he might have decided to disappear intentionally. This theory suggests Ethan made it out of the factory that night. Perhaps through a back exit or window. He realized the people he'd witnessed were powerful and connected, and he made the decision to vanish rather than risk being found. Proponents of this theory note several points. No body has ever been recovered. No confirmed sightings of Ethan after that night. His phone and laptop were never found, possibly because he took them when he fled. If you were running from people with serious resources, David argues, you ditch your car, destroy your electronics, and go completely off-grid. Maybe that's what Ethan did. Some have reported possible sightings. A man matching Ethan's description was allegedly seen at a bus station in Nevada 2 months after his disappearance. Another report came from a homeless shelter in Oregon 6 months later. But none of these sightings were confirmed. And the question remains, if Ethan escaped and is hiding, why hasn't he contacted anyone? Why hasn't he tried to expose what he saw? Maybe he's waiting, David suggests quietly. Waiting until it's safe, until he has enough evidence to bring him down without getting killed in the process. It's a hopeful theory, but hope is hard to maintain when years pass in silence. Wrong place, wrong time. A smaller group of investigators believe the case is being overcomplicated. According to this theory, Ethan stumbled into a situation that had nothing to do with his investigation. The murder he witnessed was unrelated to Northpoint Logistics. Perhaps gang activity, drug deal gone wrong, personal vendetta, and Ethan simply had the terrible luck of being in the wrong place at the worst possible time. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one, argues Detective Frank Morrison, who worked the case briefly. Maybe he wasn't targeted for what he knew. Maybe he was just collateral damage. This theory is the least popular, because it relies too heavily on coincidence. What are the odds that Ethan was investigating a specific factory? That factory happened to host a murder that night. The murder was unrelated to the corruption he was documenting. Too many coincidences. Too convenient. Most investigators dismiss this theory entirely. Theory 4. Inside job. The most conspiratorial theory suggests Ethan's disappearance involved law enforcement or government agencies. The way this case was handled from day one was suspicious, argues journalist Trevor Mason, who has written extensively about the case. Evidence disappeared. Federal agents showed up with questionable warrants. The crime scene was demolished with unusual speed. This theory posits that Ethan uncovered something that implicated powerful people, not just corporate executives, but officials, politicians, law enforcement, and when he got too close, those people used their authority to make the problem disappear. The seized evidence, the demolished factory, the missing surveillance footage, all of it coordinated by people with badges and clearance. It sounds far-fetched, but it's not without precedent. Journalists investigating government corruption have faced harassment, false charges, and worse throughout history. The question isn't whether this kind of thing happens, Mason says. The question is whether it happened to Ethan Cole. And based on the evidence, I think it did. The victim no one reported. Perhaps the strangest aspect of this entire case. The murder Ethan witnessed has never been solved because no one knows who died. No missing persons reports match the time frame and location. No body has ever been found. The blood at the scene belonged to an unknown individual. It's as if the victim didn't exist. Dr. Catherine Mills, the FBI profiler, believes this is key to understanding the case. Someone whose death wouldn't be noticed tells us something important about who they were, she explains. Either they were involved in illegal activity themselves, or they were vulnerable in a way that made them invisible. Undocumented workers, homeless individuals, people escaping abusive situations. These are the people who disappear without generating headlines. And these are exactly the kind of people a criminal organization might exploit. Or eliminate. If you wanted to kill someone and get away with it, Mills says grimly, you'd choose a victim no one would miss. The unanswered questions. 6 years have passed since Ethan Cole vanished. The case remains officially open, but no active investigation continues. Detective Reeves retired 2 years ago, frustrated by the lack of progress. Sarah Hoffman left WCRT and now teaches journalism at a university, where she tells Ethan's story to her students as a cautionary tale. David Nguyen still visits Ethan's apartment building sometimes, standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the windows, hoping somehow his friend will appear. But answers remain elusive. Who was killed at the Blackridge factory that night? Who killed them? What was Northpoint Logistics really doing? Who were the federal agents who seized Ethan's research? And most importantly, what happened to Ethan Cole? Is he dead, his body hidden somewhere it will never be found? Or is he alive, hiding, waiting for the moment he can safely emerge? The evidence that remains. Despite the systematic destruction of evidence, some fragments survived. Ethan's personal notebook, though damaged, was preserved. Ethan Cole asked one thing in his final moments. If anyone hears this, you heard it. Share this story so it doesn't disappear like he did. Subscribe to keep these cases alive. And leave your theory in the comments, because unanswered questions only stay buried when people stop asking them. This case is still unsolved. And until the truth is found, Ethan Cole is still missing.